All right, well, welcome back to the Rice Report, our conversation series here, guys. I hope you're having as much fun with these things as I am. Doing lives and being solo is fun, and I'm hoping to get back to that when I have time. Just work is very busy, family is very busy, and we live in a melting ice cube environment with our dollar value. So I'm trying to take care of those things. But thank you so much for watching these interviews. I hope you get as much out of them as I do. Today we are joined by John Fleming, former congressman out of Louisiana, senior White House advisor to Donald Trump. He's been in this game since 2008. He understands politics. And I love when you guys come on here, John, because I get to ask you questions that the general public doesn't. And I get to get the point of view from the inside. So thank you so much for coming on, John. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Eric. And yeah, it's all, I mean, I love service. I've been doing it, of course, going on 15 years now, government service at one level or another. And I'm always happy to share my experiences, the inside knowledge, because as you point out, things don't always work the way you think they do. You've learned some things in civics and in history classes, but it doesn't necessarily work that way currently, or never did in some cases. So it's always fun to talk about those things.
Yeah, and before you got into Congress, you were an MD, right? So you were a
Yes.
doctor.
Well, I still am. I'm still board certified, licensed, and I still have an operating medical clinic, although I don't get to practice actively very often. But I'm actually finishing up my reboarding, being board certified in family medicine. So, it's kind of like being a Marine. When you're a doctor for life, even if you're not practicing anymore.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So at the end, I'd love to cover some of the changes that are happening in the medical space as well.
Absolutely.
But we're going to kick it off today with Russia and the G7.
Okay.
I think you are the first person that I've heard talk about the possibility of inviting Russia into the G7, where economically they belong. I mean, they're certainly qualified. Give us a rundown of what's happening there and the goods and bads and the way that you're seeing it in the political sphere right now.
Well, dealing with a country like Russia and Vladimir Putin, there's sort of like two ways or two schools of thought. One is to kind of cut him off from everything, isolate him, force him to maybe bend his knees and give in and try to join the world community. And that's what most leaders would do. President Trump has a different view on that. He believes that if you include these leaders of countries that are rogue in many ways, that they will find a way to find some common ground. So that's just how, in some ways, President Trump is unorthodox and thinking out of the box. But if you've ever read his Art of the Deal, which I did many years ago, 30 years ago, you can tell that you never reveal what your ultimate goal is by your first steps. You always, I call it, it's a bank shot. The basketball doesn't go directly into the net. It's not nothing but net. No, it's always hitting the backboard with Donald Trump because he knows what the outcome, his goal is going to be. And so he knows where to start. And sometimes he'll just start in the middle and then decide later which way to go. But you can't argue with how effective his approach is. I mean, look at the Abraham Accords that he did in the first administration. That came out of nowhere. No one even thought that was possible. And look at what we have today. And we came this close to getting Saudi Arabia there as well. And I think we still will. So
yeah, I do too. Yeah.
I really think that he's making some interesting moves, and it'll be very interesting to see if Putin comes on board. That obviously hopefully would put a stop to the war.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious to see that he has good rapport with Putin and with Ben Salman, and just the way they shake hands, the way that they interact, the compliments they give each other. And I think you're right. Russia gets pinned in these two. Do we welcome him in? Do we push him away? And I think a lot of people, you made the comment of Putin being a recluse or off on his own island,
Right.
or being an outcast.
Right.
But he's done a lot of good things in Russia. Like if you look at what they're doing, they're making their food healthier. They don't allow GMO. As a doctor, I think that's an important thing. At the same time, they're moving towards being declared a Christian nation, and I think that these are important things the world should know. But G7, this is an economic alliance, right? There's certainly military alliance involved in it. What would that do to Russia? Like from an economist standpoint, inviting Russia into the G7, their economy is going to explode. They're going to have all kinds of new doors opened economically for the resources they produced. What do you see happening if that does occur from an economic
Well,
standpoint?
if we're able to pull Putin on board, there would be no need to have this military tension that's ongoing.
Agreed.
There are countries near him, like Poland and now Scandinavian countries that have either joined or want to join NATO because of their fear that Russia might invade them. But nothing could relax tensions more than economic trade. When you do that, you're going to get cultural trade as well. And you begin to look at each other as friends instead of adversaries. So I think if this can be done, if it can be accomplished where he's able to bring Russia, Putin back in once again to the G7, and there's healthy trade, hopefully that takes away his fear, that is Putin's fear. See, Putin claims that he's afraid that he could be attacked by NATO, so he's got to have a buffer zone to protect him from that. But why would that be necessary if they're a trading partner?
Right.
And then you have cultural exchange and you have visitors going back and forth. All of that begins to de-escalate all those tensions. And I really think that, unfortunately, that Putin still lives in the 1930s and 40s, in the old Soviet Union frame of mind. And we just need to bring him forward into the modern era. And I could well see that Trump would believe that getting Putin back in the fold might well accomplish that.
Yeah, and you can't really blame Putin, right? He was KGB during the communist era here in the beginning of his career, so it's the way he was trained. And I don't know Putin personally. What he says on TV, he kind of speaks a lot of truth, especially about Western culture that Western culture doesn't want to hear. And yet we have an entire media industry that does nothing but slander this guy. He reminds me of like Trump of Russia is kind of what he reminds me of, right? Like everything Putin does is just evil and awkward.
Right.
So how do we break the barrier there? So let's just run through a scenario. Say Trump invites him into the G7. Our media is going to go nuts. MSNBC,
Right.
CNN, they're just going to be, he's in bed with Putin again. He's Russia all over again.
Right.
Do you think Trump even cares about that? I mean, I don't think the guy cares one bit what the media says about him, but that has an effect on American culture, right?
Absolutely. Well, he loves to tweak the media. In fact, he goes out of his way to criticize CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times, calling them fake news, of course. And they just have to sit there and take it. And it makes me laugh. I just giggle every time he does that, because this is due payback for the many years of lies that have been told by these outlets against President Trump, suggesting things about him. Russian collusion, remember that? And what all that led to, but it never did exist. So there are people in this country, and I guess we call them neocons, that believe that we have kind of a biphasic world. You're either for Ukraine or you're for Russia.
Right.
And maybe that's old thinking, that may be Cold War thinking. And I think that's Trump's viewpoint here is let's try to get them to a ceasefire. And from there, maybe we can move a few inches at a time and de-escalate things. And then we stop this war completely.
Right. And if you look at the triumvirate that we talked about earlier, if you look at Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the United States, and you look at the reality of reserve reports, you literally have an alliance between three countries that control about 71% of the world's oil production.
You're right.
That is strategically one of the most important things that could be done. And the more I hear, when you hear about Putin, you hear about Russia, it's literally Cold War propaganda. Right. The country has completely changed. I mean, I see videos from Moscow. I've been invited to go to Moscow and speak in the next year. I think I'll probably take them up on it, see for myself. But the more people I see there, it looks fairly clean. It looks very peaceful. And the society seems to be fairly fit from what I see. So are we being, again, Putin has become the Trump of Russia. Like Russia has become the Trump of the globe. And I think it's time we break those barriers. I'd love to see a press conference between the two, fully translated, of course, to hear them speak together, because you don't hear that often. And I think that this bridge could be a bridge that unites Congress in a certain way when truth is actually told about the scenario. What do you think about that?
Could be. Remember that President Trump reached out to Kim of North Korea. They actually met at the DMZ and held hands. I mean, look, if you're willing to do that, then you have hope that anything is possible. And certainly that did not lead to any pact or any agreement. But hopefully it broke the ice a little bit. And again, that's classic Trump, to do things that are unexpected and unpredictable, but that can lead to some very good outcomes.
Absolutely. And we need more of that. We
Yeah.
don't need more enemies and boogeymen. Like that's
Right.
one of the things that we continually get fed by the media is this guy's a boogeyman, and then they make up lies about him to make us believe they're the boogeyman.
Right.
In reality, all of human nature does want to coexist. We do want to get along. We do want to have good trade and fair
Mm,
trade. And
right.
more importantly, how do you neutralize the largest nuclear threat in the world? You bring them into your fold,
Hmm.
right? You allow them to create trade. You open up their resources for a country who drastically, desperately
Right.
needs those resources. Now, I think this has a big impact. I think there's something here to this more than just economics and de-escalation. I think this has a lot to do with AI. And I think that AI in Russia will be developed just as quickly as it is here because they have the energy to do so. I think that has anything to do with that's just my assumption from a technologist point of view. But if you have disparate forces working on global AI systems, that's going to be a new form of warfare. It's going to be another Cold War fought on the internet. Do you see any intertwinement there between the two countries?
Well, that may be beyond my pay grade, Eric, but I will say that AI is going to be what the internet was when it came into being. It's going to change life totally, the same as the first automobile, the first airplane. There's no way that you can limit it to one country or one culture.
Right.
It's going to be pervasive in everything we do. Our lives are going to be managed. I won't say run, but managed through AI in the future. And you won't even know it. It'll be in the background. You'll just know that things will happen that you want to happen. And you're not even going to be sure why, but AI is doing that. So I don't think there's any way we can prevent countries like Russia or even maintain an edge on AI because again, it's one of those things
It
that will.
moves too fast.
Oh yeah, it's boost to I mean, it's a technology, and it's I mean, once it's out there and it's among companies and countries, it's just going to spread, like a contagious disease. It'll go completely around the world in no time.
Well, here's why I'm thinking that. So I explain AI to people pretty simply. Like AI is a tool, like everything else. And imagine AI is a hammer. In the hands of a carpenter, that hammer is going to make amazing things. In the hands of a psychopath, that's going to be
Mhm.
devastation and murder.
Yeah,
So I think that part of this alliance and inviting them into G7 with the other major countries around the world who will be big players in AI, make no mistake, they're already doing it. I think
yeah,
what you're doing is what he's building actually is an open sourced alliance to be able to create decentralized AI. Centralized AI in the hands of a psychopath is the end of humanity.
yeah.
And we are making a man a psychopath by ostracizing him and not inviting him into the rest of the world. I think it's such a brilliant move on so many different paths. And
Right.
you are the first person that I saw talking about this topic. And it's astounding to me that you haven't been on every TV station in the world talking about Russia being invited to the G7. Now, you have extensive experience with Trump. You were a senior White House advisor in the first term. You
Yes.
served in Congress. You saw his rise to power. What's going on in the White House? I know you talk to people in the White House. What is that atmosphere like right now? It has to be, I imagine it's energetic, it's exciting, and it's also probably the most frustrating period as transitions occur.
Well, my period in the White House was during COVID, during the
Yeah.
peak of COVID. I came to the White House, the West Wing, on March 23rd, 2020,
Mm.
and I was there till the last day. A lot of people resigned on January 6th or the day after. They abandoned their post, which I would never do and didn't do. So I can just say that there was a lot of personnel turnover during the 4 years of the Trump administration, both in the bureaucracies, in the departments, but as well as in the West Wing of the White House. I think that a lot of people have really uh, earned their way, and President Trump has a more stable workforce, both in the White House and in the departments. So I don't think you're going to see the kind of turnover that we saw And also, this is not unsettling times the way it was during the COVID pandemic, where we'd never seen a pandemic like this. We didn't know necessarily how this was going to turn out. We were working on every possible method to shut it down. We could. We didn't know its origins. So I would say that things, although I'm not in the White House now, but knowing the people and the fact that there's not the kind of turnover that we used to hear about, I think things are much more settled. And I would say, the machinery is operating pretty efficiently there right now, from what I understand.
Hmm.
I expect it to remain that way. Although there's always going to be people, usually after the first year, you're going to see people leave and new ones come in for whatever reason.
Sure.
Could be that the workload is too heavy for some people. They've had it. They're exhausted. Maybe they're moved into the departments someplace, or maybe they've gotten a promotion someplace, or maybe President Trump doesn't find them effective, so you're fired and they're eased out. So, but I really don't see the kind of turnover and maybe some of the newness that we saw in the first administration. And I think that's because there's a lot of people that are working for President Trump who he trusts and who are very loyal to him. You don't see the leaks out the way
Right.
you used to, because I know when I was there, you would have staff members who were leaking against each other, and sometimes senior staff members leaking against department heads, secretaries of departments. And it was really ridiculous. People were at each other's throats in some cases. I had to do some refereeing among cabinet members, and we don't need that. And I do think that President Trump has really selected a much better group of people than what we had before. Not that they were not ineffective and good, but I think the fact that they really fit in, they're much more Trump world people who are much more comfortable
Cultural
with the
fits.
cultural thing. Absolutely, because many of them came from a different kind of environment, and they might just think, well, the president's right 9 out of 10 times, but 10% of the time he's wrong, and I'm going to get my way. And you see how that goes sometimes. I don't think we're seeing that now. I think everybody is 100% on board. They really recognize and respect the high competency level and, frankly, the genius of Donald Trump. And so they're following his lead, which is really what we need in our country.
I agree with that. I mean, you have to have a cohesive culture, especially when
Yeah.
you're moving mountains this size. You
Right.
you really can't have anyone that doesn't fit into the. They maybe the most skilled and talented, but
Right.
culturally they have to be on board and be willing
Yeah.
to work those 80-hour weeks.
Right.
Because I'm sure you've been through those. Uh,
Yes, and it's often said one head is a leader, many heads is a monster,
yeah,
and you just don't need that when you're running a nation.
yeah,
You need one leader who's developing policy, and of course he listens to people, he gets their opinion, but then once he makes a decision, then he expects you to carry it out, unless something happens that he wants to adjust that. And as I say, in the first go around, you had people who kind of wanted it their way
yeah.
and not necessarily his way. And that didn't work out well in some cases, but he was always willing to make quick changes if necessary. And he's still prepared to do that even now.
Nimbleness is required for that job. You
Yeah.
must be nimble. Now, I'm going to go back to COVID. So, being that you're in the White House during that era, probably the most chaotic era in U.S. political history, we have, you mentioned we didn't know where it came from, what it was. It just hit the scene. Now we know.
Yeah.
Now we know a lot more than we did back then. Do you see justice coming anytime soon for some of these bad actors that were malicious and more importantly became very rich during that era?
Well, to be honest with you, there have been a lot of things to happen going all the way back to Lois Lerner, who was
Mhm.
working at the IRS and preventing these Tea Party groups from getting their tax exempt status.
Yeah.
Nothing ever came from that. You had, of course,
Obama weaponizing the IRS against his political dissenters. I was part of that. So
yes,
nothing's happened there. We have not been
nothing's
awarded.
happened there. Using the media to both in the Obama and the Biden administration to punish their political enemies. You had Hillary Clinton, who breach bit her personal computer with a lot of top secret information. Nothing ever came from that. And then, of course, Hunter Biden's laptop, which the FBI actually lied about its existence, claimed that it didn't exist. And so, name me the names of people who've been frog marched off to prison from that.
Great
You're not
point.
going to come up with any. And so I don't have, that's the problem, is that people don't have to pay a price for doing these things inside of government. It's bound to happen again. And so I do know that Kash Patel, and I knew Kash when I was in the White House. Kash Patel has a lot of intention right now of going forward and prosecuting these people. But again, you got to find evidence.
Yeah.
And just like in the case of Lois Lerner, she or someone on her behalf destroyed that evidence. And so there was no evidence to prosecute her with. So it goes on and on and on like that. The accountability in government is at a very low point.
And that's the most dangerous thing for a society.
Yes.
Society is held accountable. Like if I commit a crime, I'm not a government bureaucrat. If I commit a crime, I'm getting processed and I'm getting imprisoned. And
Right.
we're not seeing that. And that's something I think every American is concerned about, even ones who, who don't toe the conspiracy theory line, right? Even average, normal, like where is the Epstein list? We were promised that 3 months ago. Does it exist? Like you just said, they destroy evidence everywhere.
Right.
These are such interesting times. And I think the international distractions that we have, and they are primarily international distractions. These are diverting the attention away from this administration from actually putting the screws to these people, which needs to be done.
Right.
And you've always been on that line. I looked at your political career. You've always been on. You've been an America First guy for a long time. And of course,
yes.
No one's 100% with voting records and things like that. But primarily, you've always voiced foreign wars aren't our issue. Let's focus on our country. Basic stuff that every American politician should be focused on. Do you see a change in this? I actually, I'm so hopeful that there's a change, but I also feel like a Pollyanna half the time doing that.
Well, you mean specifically about America First? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, you can't be America First without holding Americans accountable for their own inactions.
Right. Well, I'll just give you an example. As state treasurer of Louisiana, we were responsible for standing up a website which had never been done before and has never been done to this extent in any state. And that is a K through 12 public education transparency website where you can actually look at every financial transaction of every school in the state. And we launched that on March 31st. We found out where taxpayers were paying bar bills. We found in one case a massage, personal car payments were being made. We found someone receiving $7,000 a month as a laptop rental. Uber Eats, all that, all to the taxpayer. Well, that's been probably going on for decades because nobody could see it. Well, now it's transparent. Daylight is the best disinfectant. And I'm confident that we're going to see that extinguish over time as we reveal that. So government accountability always begins with transparency. And once people know what you're doing, you can't hide it anymore. Then, of course, you have to back that up with audits and law enforcement, hopefully.
Yes.
And in many cases, it's not necessarily a criminal act, but it's unethical behavior. And a lot can be done to put a stop to that. And of course, we found out in Doge, there were accounts, there was money going to NGOs that in the billions of dollars, that there was no real legislative intent for that to happen, but it was just going. Why? Because nobody knew. There weren't even these accounts didn't even exist as a true accounting account. They were not even properly labeled in many cases. And as long as nobody's looking and they don't know you're doing this, then it can go on for decades, and you never know. So, in any
and it
event,
has been. It's been going on for many decades, and there was no button. There's no button. So anything that got submitted, there's only one option for the payment processor, and that was yes.
And and your friends are going to be paid, and oftentimes that money is supposed to go to an NGO, but then it finds its way into political spending in one way or another. It's either in someone's pocket or it's the Democrat Party spending money. Maybe this happens in the Republican Party. I'm not aware of any case of that, but it shouldn't happen in any party where taxpayer money finds its way, being utilized for political means. And again, you've got to, with our technology now and AI, these accounts are not hard to track. I mean, with blockchain, we know everything about every account, right? With Bitcoin and blockchain, why don't we have this with government? We just, we've been working off spreadsheets, I guess.
Well, it would be detrimental to the system, John, because the system right now is awesome. You can be a government worker, go out, get a massage, go to Las Vegas, gamble your money, fail your constituencies miserably, and then you get a promotion.
Right.
So in the private sector, if we did any of this stuff, we'd be fired and sued.
Yeah.
And yet government workers have had 25 years of free run on our taxpayer money, at least 25 years.
Yeah, at least in a private business, there's somebody there who is going to be harmed by what you do. In the case of government spending, people are harmed. It's just that they have no contact or knowledge of how they're being harmed. And again, that's where government accountability comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's get into your field of practice here. Let's get into the medical space. Now, America is a nightmare. We have chemicals approved in our food that are not approved in any other country in the world. We've gone from one of the most, you look at a picture of a beach in 1970, everybody's thin, they're fit, they looked happy.
Right.
And now you go to a beach today and 40% of the people on the beach are morbidly obese and half of the place is depressed, even in the sun next to the ocean.
Right.
RFK is coming in, and here's the trade-off, and I'm just going to be honest. The trade-off is I love what he's doing with the food. I cannot get behind being forced to wear a wearable device to track my activity and caloric intake. That's my business and I'm private. So, they throw stuff out there for us to rebut. And it's our job as citizens to say, make the food healthy and leave me alone. That's what government should be doing. But as a physician, what is the medical protocol right now in Congress? Like how did we get to this point where we have poisonous forever chemicals in our food? How did we get here? That's the one thing I'm so concerned about. How did we even get to a point?
Free enterprise, Eric. I'll give you an example. If you are General Mills and you're creating a cereal and you're competing against Kellogg, then how are you going to beat out a similar cereal, but to make it look neater, look more colorful, tastier, sweeter? And so there's always been that drive to, go forward, do more, make food more delicious and more appealing. There's never been a reverse. And we're at a society as a society, we're beginning to recognize, well, wait a second now, is there something wrong here? That if we keep encouraging people by making food tastier and tastier and more processed, and therefore people eat more and more of it, then we're going to make more money. But the problem is diabetes is skyrocketing and people are dying of heart attacks. So maybe we ought to reconsider what's going on here, right? So competition is what has driven this. I know some people think that, it's evil people who are trying to poison the American public. I don't believe that. I just think it's plain old competition. And there's nothing wrong with capitalism and competition, except there needs to be limits. And we just haven't had the kind of limits necessary in our food intake. And as a result of that, people have become sort of addicted to certain kinds of foods. And look, I come from the state where the addiction is the worst. Louisiana has the worst record when it comes to obesity. We have Cajun food, which is full of salt and full of fat and
delicious.
And it's totally delicious. Okay. And I eat it. I don't care. I'm a doctor. I still eat Cajun food. Okay. And I will continue. But we do have to be careful that we're responsible in creating these products. And so it's reasonable to have some reasonable regulations in doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't discount open market competition. I'm a capitalist, so I can't discount that. The problem I think people have is that we've spent an inordinate amount of money on the FDA to say, to be the referee on competition, to say, I know you want your cereal to be, I mean, General Mills is an interesting story because they created the phrase breakfast or break your fast is the most important meal of the day, when you actually should be fasting in the morning so your body can heal. Which is not, they're trying to sell cereal, but they're also decreasing health and spirit.
Well,
and
Eric,
spirit. Fasting is good for the soul.
right. Believe it or not, though, cereal actually it was actually originally developed as a health food
Yes.
back in the 1800s. Kellogg, I forget his name, but that was his last name, came up with the idea that really products of vegetation, seedlings and things like that, grains,
Oats. Yep.
oats would be good for you. And we've been convinced of that for 150 years. And then somebody says, well, wait a second now. A lot of these products end up as sugar in your body, and sugar is not good for you, at least not excessive sugar. So we've also had a learning curve along the way. I can remember when you didn't dare eat fat. I mean, fat was bad for you back in the 60s and 70s. That's what caused heart attacks. Sugar is okay. Well, it's just reversed. Now fats are okay, but sugar's not okay. One of the things I tell people, and I live this myself, I run 2.5 miles every other day. I lift weights. I'm a 3rd-degree black belt in karate. I believe that the way to control your weight and to avoid metabolic syndrome is to build up your muscularity and to build up your heart response in terms of your stroke volume and your heart efficiency and all of that. Keeping the blockages, the atheromas out of your coronary arteries. And the best way to do that is a combination of exercise and keeping yourself both muscular and not necessarily thin, but trim. And it's lean body mass versus fat that's so important in that. And as long as you do that, you burn a certain number of calories through aerobic and also anaerobic exercise, and you eat moderately in terms of calories, and you make sure you have a balanced diet, that you're going to avoid metabolic syndrome, which means you're not going to have hypertension
100%.
unless it runs in your family, and you're not going to have diabetes. And if you do, there's some things you can do to reverse out of that. And so it's not just eating foods that don't have dyes and that are ultra processed. It's also about your lifestyle. That's so key.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
whatever you do not smoke or vape, for heaven's
Absolutely.
sakes. And I mean, that reverses a lot of the benefits you get from your eating habits and your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, when the whole trend of 10,000 steps came out, and take 10,000 steps. If you tracked ancient man, they were taking 25,000 steps a day. So even 10,000 is about halfway to where we used to be. And we used to eat food that came from the earth that didn't require a machine to process it or chemicals to enhance it. But I think that we have a shot at doing this, of actually regulating what goes into these delicious foods. They can be just as good with different chemicals. And I think that's the one thing RFK is doing. Just get rid of the wearables, RFK. I met your team in Memphis. Get rid of the wearables and you've got a winner. Get rid of that and stronger vaccine stance, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion.
Sure.
It means with that and 350, that and 950 will get you a Starbucks coffee anymore.
Right.
So,
well, the other thing I will tell you, an observation I've made, is I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and you're right, adults were a lot thinner then than they are now. But at least you had to get out of the couch to turn the channel on the TV. Now you don't even have to hardly move. See, there's so many conveniences that we have. Your baseline burn of calories is well below what it was 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And all you have to do is compensate by getting on the treadmill or going outside, walking the dog, or I prefer running. But you also have to build muscle too, because you can be what's called thin fat, where you're a thin person, but you don't have any muscle at all. And as people get older, they're more apt to have falls. And once you get beyond age 50, 60, 70, and you fall, your risk of dying indirectly from that over time goes way up. So these are all very critical parts of that. It's not just about the contents and the dyes and so forth in the food. you have to match that with lifestyle as well. And as we're able to do more things with less physical effort, you've got to compensate for that, because, as I say, growing up in the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of things we had to do as just normal daily activities. Our parents threw us out the door first thing in the morning in the summertime, and we weren't expected to be seen or heard until dark.
Oh yeah.
So we
I
learned.
remember those days. I was
Yeah,
a kid in the 80s, so I
yeah,
totally get that. Yeah.
right. But now kids sit there with a screen in front of them and they hardly move. Well, no
Yeah.
wonder. And then they're eating snacks at the same time. So, and we can't figure out why we have obesity. Well, it's a lot different world in terms of lifestyle today.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great articulation, because I think a lot of people immediately blame the food to remove the accountability on themselves.
Yes.
And if you have a balanced diet and active lifestyle, you'll end up looking like RFK in your 70s. If you don't, you'll end up being Jerry Nadler or Chris Christie, who
Yeah.
we should have dropped both of them on Iran. Those are the bombs we should have dropped on Iran. Both those guys. Boom. Big crater. Game over. Drop Nadler first. Nobody wants Christie. He's another 100 pounds. So you take those two into coordination. We get rid of two of our issues. The whole
Yeah.
world solved. There's your peace bomb right there for you. Well, John, this has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming
Great.
on here, and thank you for your stance. I'm going to say one thing. I'm a people person, and I watch people and interviewing people. I get to see where they light up. I'm very excited for this next phase of your life, getting out of politics, because you light up talking about health. You literally light up. You can tell you love this stuff,
Yeah.
and you are doing what you're practicing, what you preach, which more doctors should do. By the way, if you walk into a doctor's office who smells like he just had a cigarette and weighs 300 pounds, find a new doctor. I'm just so excited for you, man. You just lit up talking about health, and I hope you do this more often, because people
Sure.
need to hear more sounding boards in this space.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Eric. And yeah, I just believe it's so important because not only does, functioning in a healthy way prolong your life, but also the quality of life.
Yeah.
Because most people who die, say at age 80, perhaps, their last 10 years are very miserable,
Yeah.
because they're declining physically. And by doing these things early in life, in early adulthood, what happens is you extend that health period. And not only do you extend how long you live, but how healthy you are and how active you are and and dementia is directly related
It's
to
a
how
form of
healthy
diabetes. Yeah.
it is, because your organs all pretty much age at the same rate, so you just have to decide what rate that's going to be.
This is great. John, where can people find you now? You got a blog, Substack, Twitter? How
Well,
can they find you?
actually, I am, even though I'm treasurer of Louisiana and a physician and also a business creator, I announced 6 months ago that I'm running for the United States Senate against Senator Bill Cassidy, who, as you know, has probably been the counterpoint to Secretary Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
He was the last vote. He had to have his arm twisted to approve Secretary Kennedy for his position.
That's right.
And there was a lot of turmoil and kerfuffle that went on with that. He required Kennedy to submit things to him for approval, and he would get the last word on a lot of things. I think Kennedy's pretty much ignored him on that since now he's the secretary. But he really held out to the very last. Had he not relented, and I'm sure the pressure was really strong from President Trump, then he wouldn't be our Secretary of Health and Human Services. But ultimately, of course, Cassidy's problem is that he voted to convict Trump in the second impeachment
That's
trial.
right.
And it was at the end of his first administration. He was leaving anyway. So why did he do it? Because it would have foreclosed the possibility for Trump to run for reelection, and we would have Kamala Harris or Joe Biden today as president, had he been successful along with 6 other Republican senators and all the Democrats in the U.S. Senate. So for that reason and others too, he's really disassociated in the view of Louisiana voters, and they want a replacement. And I'm the leading contender for that.
Well, when does the campaign start, and how can they find you?
Well, I've been campaigning for 6 months. And the primary election, which is the important one here because we're both Republicans, is April of next year. That's 10 months away, April of 2026. And you can go to FlemingSenateCampaign.com. That's Fleming with one M, FlemingSenateCampaign.com. And you can follow that. And also, I'm on Facebook, Fleming for Louisiana, and X and all these social medias. I'm on there. I personally engage and happy to talk with people through those modalities. So we have a very active campaign, and it's going to be a national plebiscite because there are many people who feel like that he does not deserve reelection because of, again, voting to convict Trump, not to impeach, but to convict after looking at the evidence. And this was not long after Trump had endorsed him for reelection last time. So I think Louisiana's had it with Bill Cassidy.
Say you're senator, you're winning the campaign, which I'm going to help you here because you need to get rid of Cassidy. He is an absolute turncoat. What's your stance on Bitcoin?
I support Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies. We're the first state to accept payment of fees by cryptocurrency. I believe it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Lite, and Ethereum are the ones that we accept now. Now, in full disclosure, it's converted to dollars, greenbacks, before we get it.
Sure.
But I'm very open to receiving Bitcoin payments. I want to see more regulations because we've had some disasters where money's been stolen and problems with other cryptos. But as we become more comfortable as a nation, as a culture, and we have the regulations to ensure that consumers are protected, but even short of that, I'm open to any kind of fees, any sort of payments, taxes, whatever. If people want to pay with Bitcoin, I'm happy to find a way to make that possible.
Love it. Freedom money for all and a freedom candidate. So,
Absolutely.
John, can't wait to see the campaign. Let me know how I can help. I'd love to have you back on the show as the campaign develops and talk about some topics in Louisiana. Great state of Louisiana, wonderful place, wonderful people, needs a lot of help.
Yes.
And there's always something there to fix because you're right in the middle of hurricanes and all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
Fix New Orleans. New Orleans. That is a beautiful city that has just been degraded over the last 15 years. Love to see that glory of old New Orleans come back.
Right.
Well, John, thank you so much. Can't thank you enough, man. This is a great conversation.
Good.
We actually agreed. I always prep my guests so you guys know out there that if I disagree with you, I'm going to mention it right away, and we're going to talk about it like gentlemen. Generally agree with what you're doing here. I'm really excited for your campaign. I hope that the people of Louisiana get behind you, and we have somebody else good in Washington, D.C. So I thank you for coming on here, my friend.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me, Eric. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Absolutely. Well, God bless you. God bless America. And we'll see you next time, everybody, on the Rice Report. Thank you so much.